You should think less about the news and more about the olds. There was once a king who wanted to see if his very bright child was ready for the big time. So he gave him some money and sent him on his way outside of the palace into the real world to see where he would end up. At first, the prince was pretty conscientious. He hung around smart people and spent his money wisely. But gradually, he started surrounding himself with negative people and grew addicted to the vices of the world. Fast forward a year, and the prince is now destitute. His clothing are tatters and he is penniless. Realizing that he's failed his father's test, he swallows the shame and heads back to the palace. But the palace guard, not recognizing him in this terrible state, doesn't let him enter the gates. This guy looks like a hobo. He's completely broken. He heads to the edge of the gate and starts crying loudly. At that time, the king is walking through his palace garden and overhears a familiar voice crying. He follows the voice, and sure enough, he recognizes his son, brings him back to the palace, cleans him up. After a while, the king deems his son ready for another try. So he does what he did again, and he sets him off into the real world. This has been a parable of the Baal Shem Tov. God dispatches our souls to this earth to perfect it and to learn from the earth. Oftentimes throughout the year, we fail at this and we succumb to the temptations of life. Each year on Rosh Hashanah, we park ourselves at the palace gates and wonder, how can we be entered in? How are we going to be granted a sweet new year? With that comes the blow of the shofar, which symbolizes the cry of the prince, with which he's recognized by his father, the king. The king lets him back into the palace and sets him up for another good year.